All right, so you did it. You passed the exam, you got your license, and now you're looking at this brand new radio just itching to get on the air. But wait, there's a choice you got to make right away. VHF or UHF? It's a huge question, probably the first one every new ham asks. So let's break it down and get you talking.
And hey, for real, congrats on getting licensed. That's a big deal. That box of buttons and knobs in front of you, that's your ticket to a whole new world. I know it can look a little complicated at first, but don't worry. That's exactly why we're here.
So that brings us right back to it, doesn't it? The big question. You are ready to go, but which button do you push? Which frequency do you pick? VHF or UHF? They kind of sound the same, right? But trust me, knowing the difference between them is absolutely the key to making sure you have a good time on the air.
Okay, to really get a handle on this, we've got to dip our toes into a tiny bit of physics. Now, don't tune out. I promise it's super simple. It all boils down to one thing: the actual shape and size of the radio waves.
And that one thing is called wavelength. I mean, it's exactly what it sounds like, the physical length of one single wave as it travels through the air. And here's the only thing you need to remember from all the science stuff. The higher the frequency number on your radio, the shorter the actual wave is. Seriously, that one little fact explains everything we're about to talk about.
So boom, that is the fundamental difference. VHF, that's very high frequency, it sounds high, but it actually has the longer waves. And then UHF, ultra high frequency, has the much, much shorter waves. It seems a little backward, I know, but that one single physical difference completely changes how these signals act out in the real world.
All right, let's tackle VHF first. The best way to think about it, VHF is the open road of radio. You know, like a long, straight highway out in the country. It loves wide open spaces and can just go for miles and miles as long as nothing gets in its way.
And the reason for that is that VHF signals travel almost exclusively by what we call line of sight. The best analogy I can think of is a super bright laser pointer. You point it, and that beam goes perfectly straight until, wham, it hits a wall. VHF waves act almost exactly like that.
And you can see that happening right here in this diagram. You've got that perfect straight path from one radio to the next. Maybe you get a little bounce off the ground too. But because those VHF waves are physically long, think of them as being, well, kind of stiff. They've got a lot of momentum pushing them forward, which is great, but it also means they're not so great at bending or weaving around obstacles.
So where is this open road frequency being used in the real world? Oh, it's everywhere. The FM radio you listen to in your car, that's VHF. It's the go-to for ships at sea and for air traffic control talking to airplanes. You see the pattern? Anytime you've got a long, clear, unobstructed view, VHF is king. But, and this is a big but, this also points to VHF's greatest weakness. Because those long, straight traveling waves are so stubborn, they get stopped cold by big solid stuff. A small hill, a mountain, even a big concrete building can basically act like a giant brick wall for your signal.
Just look at what's happening here. That mountain is completely blocking the direct path. Sure, you might get a tiny, super weak little bit of the signal that kind of bends over the top. We call that diffraction, but for all intents and purposes, your conversation is over. This is exactly why VHF can be a real headache if you live in a hilly or mountainous area.
Okay, so let's flip the script and talk about UHF. If VHF is the open road, then UHF is the absolute master of the urban jungle. It's practically designed to navigate the messy, complicated, and dense environments of a city. Remember how we said UHF waves are physically much shorter? Well, that's its secret weapon. That's its superpower. Those tiny, shorter waves are just way, way better at finding little paths through and around all the junk you'd find in a city, or even just inside a big building. Here's a good way to picture it. A big, long, clumsy VHF wave comes along and just smacks into a wall and bounces right off. But a whole swarm of these smaller, nimbler UHF waves hits that same wall, and they're much better at finding all the little cracks and gaps, through a window, between the steel rebar, under a door. They can just kind of wiggle and sneak their way through. And just think about what technologies use UHF. It's literally the backbone of our modern world. Your Wi-Fi, your Bluetooth headphones, your cell phone, your GPS, all of it runs on UHF. And why? Precisely because those things have to work reliably when you're inside a building or walking around a city. For them, getting through obstacles isn't a bonus, it's everything. Now, nothing's perfect, right? There's always a trade-off. Because UHF waves are so good at bouncing around, they don't travel nearly as far as VHF does out in open country. They just run out of steam faster. And that higher frequency also takes more juice to transmit, which means it's going to drain your radio's battery a little quicker.
Okay, deep breath. We've gone through the science, we've talked about the strengths and weaknesses, now for the important part. Let's put it all together so you can actually choose the right tool for the job.
This little chart here is basically your cheat sheet. It lays it all out, side by side. You can see it really just boils down to your environment. Outdoors and open terrain, go with VHF. Indoors or in a city, that's UHF territory. Oh, and check out that point about antenna size. Because UHF waves are smaller, their antennas can be smaller too. That's a huge plus for those little handheld radios you want to carry around.
So if you remember nothing else, remember this one simple rule of thumb. If you're outside, use VHF. If you're inside, use UHF. Honestly, that one little rule will steer you right probably 90% of the time. Okay, so let's go all the way back to the beginning. Back to you staring at your radio. We've been talking about VHF versus UHF as if it's this big, tough choice you have to make. But what if I told you that you don't actually have to choose at all?
Here's a little secret straight from the ARRL, that's the National Association for Amateur Radio. They point out that the most popular radios out there today aren't VHF or UHF radios. They're what we call dual band. That means they can do both. They can transmit on the VHF 2-meter band, and they can transmit on the UHF 70-centimeter band.
And that, my friends, is the punchline. After all this back and forth, the best part is you don't really have to choose. Modern radios completely solve this problem for us. The radio you probably have or are thinking about getting is almost certainly a dual-band radio. So you get the open road of VHF and the urban jungle of UHF all in one handy little device.
So there you have it. You're now armed with the knowledge to hit the airwaves with confidence. You get the difference between the waves, you know the bands, you understand the tools. The only question left is, what's your first conversation going to be about? Go ahead, pick up that mic and say hello.